Andy finally ran into some living people. He just wanted to say hello, but the other guy didn't respond. Instead, he cautiously revealed a gun at his waist. In this zombie apocalypse, there were very few survivors left. Because of the shortage of food, trust between people was gone. Andy and his family had been drifting on a boat for 2.5 months, just trying to survive. Staying on the boat was safe enough, but their biggest issue was food. One day, Andy spotted an abandoned yacht. He rowed over in a small boat, hoping there might be food on board. To be safe, he carefully checked inside using a mirror first. Once he saw everything looked clear, Andy went inside the cabin. He got really lucky this time. He found plenty of food, enough for several months at sea. But just as he felt happy about his find, there was suddenly a noise from another room. Andy didn't think much of it, and went back to his boat with the box full of food. Little did he know that his carelessness had put his wife, Kay, in great danger. After learning Andy got food from that overturned yacht, Kay secretly went to the yacht while Andy was asleep, just to find a razor for Andy. Suddenly, she heard noises again. Feeling something wasn't right, she turned to leave, but it was already too late. Sometime later, Andy woke up to his daughter Rosie's crying. He picked Rosie up and was about to look for Kay when he saw blood on the floor. He instantly had a bad feeling. Andy opened the bathroom door and found Kay treating a bite wound. Andy was stunned and confused, until Kay put on a countdown timer on her wrist. That's when he realized she had been bitten by a zombie. They had just 48 hours before she would turn into one. Andy stayed calm. He immediately started packing their things. According to a government-issued map, there was a rescue station on land. Maybe they'd have a cure there. Without wasting time, they set off. But land was way more dangerous than the boat. They had to stay alert all the time. Thankfully, luck was on their side again. They soon found a car. But as Andy was filling it up with gas, Kay spotted a zombie coming their way. She wanted to warn Andy, but feared her voice would attract it, so she turned on the car's signal instead. Andy quickly understood her meaning, rushed back inside before the zombie could attack, and drove away immediately. They hadn't driven far when Kay noticed her wound was covered in zombie fluid. It was a clear sign she'd soon become a zombie herself. To protect her family, Kay wanted to leave the car immediately. Seeing her so emotional, Andy had no choice but to stop the car. He got out and caught up with her, begging her not to go. Kay knew what her fate would be, and she knew there was no cure. Still, Andy refused to let her go. He forced Kay back into the car, and just to make sure she wouldn't try anything reckless again, he broke the door handle. They kept driving toward their destination, but after a short while, disaster struck once more. A zombie suddenly appeared on the road, causing Andy to swerve instinctively and crash the car. A sharp branch pierced through Kay's abdomen, and Andy was knocked unconscious from the heavy impact. When Andy finally woke up, he saw a word written on the car door, and noticed Kay's face was completely covered in zombie fluid. It wasn't long before she turned. Andy tried comforting their frightened daughter, Rosie, but Kay, now fully transformed, suddenly bit him. After getting Rosie safely out of the car, Andy went back inside to put Kay out of her misery. Afterward, Andy collapsed in despair, letting out an angry, helpless scream. For a moment, he considered leaving this world with his wife, but for baby Rosie's sake, he couldn't give up yet. He took the wristband from Kay's hand, put it on his own wrist, and started the 48-hour countdown. Once again, Andy carried Rosie on his back and kept moving. He had to find someone trustworthy to care for Rosie before he transformed. Rosie kept crying along the way, so Andy sprayed some of Kay's perfume nearby. The familiar scent immediately calmed her, but at that moment, Andy saw the zombie responsible for their accident. As he prepared to finish it off with a branch, an indigenous girl suddenly appeared and stopped him. She calmly sliced open her palm with a sharp stone. The zombie immediately followed her scent of blood. Clearly, this zombie had once been someone important to her, and this was just her way of keeping loved ones close. Andy continued following the map toward the rescue station, finally arriving at nightfall. But the place wasn't what he expected. It was completely dark and deserted. Just as Andy began searching around, he spotted a woman sitting quietly in a corner. Seeing Andy's injured arm, the woman bandaged him and told him this place wasn't a rescue station anymore. Due to the rapid spread of the virus, the government had shut it down long ago. Andy considered leaving Rosie with her, but then he noticed the woman remove a wig and take some medication. She was clearly seriously ill. Realizing she wouldn't be able to care for Rosie, Andy had no choice but to move on. Early the next morning, he said goodbye to the woman and continued on with Rosie on his back. Along the way, he saw many zombies with their heads buried in the dirt. If anyone passed nearby, the zombies would wake up. Soon, Andy spotted a pickup truck and went to see if it still worked, but he didn't realize the owner was close by. Just then, a zombie had started following him, but the gunshot would soon attract more zombies. A man named Vic had gotten stuck in a pit nearby and called to Andy for help, but before he could finish, a large group of zombies appeared in the distance. Without hesitation, Andy grabbed Vic's keys, started the truck, and quickly pulled Vic out. They drove away just in time before the zombies reached them. Vic took Andy to a gas plant where he lived with a woman named Lorraine. They seemed to have a close relationship. As soon as Vic returned, he gave Lorraine a necklace he found, but appearances were deceiving. The moment Vic turned away, Lorraine threw the necklace aside in disgust. Andy watched this, confused. Just as Andy sat down to rest, Vic invited him to go out again. With no other choice, Andy had to leave Rosie with Lorraine, but Andy soon realized Vic wanted him to practice shooting. There were a bunch of zombies gathered near a cage, as if something was attracting them. Andy didn't think much about it at first. With Vic's help, they quickly got rid of all the zombies. But when Andy got closer, he saw a girl trapped in the cage. It was Thumi, the indigenous girl he'd met before. Andy originally thought Vic and Lorraine might care for Rosie, but clearly, people who played games with human lives weren't trustworthy. Meanwhile, as Lorraine was caring for Rosie, she suddenly noticed zombie fluid on Rosie's clothes. She instantly understood what was happening, but Lorraine didn't say anything. Instead, she quietly cleaned Rosie's clothes and hung them up to dry. When Andy returned and saw this, he realized Lorraine knew about his infection. Maybe Lorraine was a decent person after all, at least better than Vic. Perhaps Rosie could stay with her. That night, Andy finally made up his mind. His time was almost up. After a heartbreaking goodbye to Rosie, Andy walked out alone into the darkness. Holding the government-issued injection kit, he was ready to end his own life. At the critical moment, Lorraine suddenly appeared holding Rosie. She clearly knew what Andy was about to do. When Andy pleaded with Lorraine to take care of Rosie, Lorraine confessed she couldn't. She revealed she and Vic weren't actually married. Vic had killed her real husband. Lorraine told Andy that if he really wanted to protect Rosie, he had to take her away immediately. Hearing this, along with everything Vic had done during the day, Andy was now fully convinced of Vic's true nature. He knew he couldn't die just yet. Andy suddenly remembered the family he'd met by the river earlier. They had 2 daughters. Maybe they could help. He decided to take Lorraine and Rosie there to try their luck. But right after Andy made this decision, Vic appeared out of nowhere and knocked Andy out. When Andy woke up, he discovered he was locked in a cage with Thumi. He knew he didn't have much time left. Soon he'd become a zombie himself. He desperately needed to find a way out. At that moment, zombies started closing in. Seeing sausages hanging on the cage, Andy had an idea. He tied the sausages with rope and threw them to one side, attracting the zombies. As the zombies fought for the food, they accidentally lifted the cage door. Andy and Thumi used this chance to escape. They hurried back to the gas plant, quietly sneaked inside, and woke Lorraine up. Then Andy grabbed Rosie, preparing to leave. Vic was still asleep and didn't notice them escaping. But just as they reached the car, Vic stormed out with a shotgun. Lorraine tried to stop Vic from shooting, but as soon as she stepped forward, Vic shot her down. Seeing Vic about to catch them, Andy, Rosie, and Thumi fled quickly. They ran all the way to a cave, finally losing Vic in the darkness. Vic screamed angrily outside, but Andy and the others didn't dare make a sound. Fortunately, Vic eventually left. They decided to wait until dawn to move on. Late that night, Thumi woke up to strange noises. She turned on the flashlight and saw Andy licking blood from the cave wall. It was clear he was becoming bloodthirsty. By sunrise, Andy returned to normal and continued the journey with Rosie and Thumi. When they reached a large tree, Thumi stopped. She explained that the zombie Andy had encountered earlier was actually her father. He had been killed by their tribe and buried beneath that very tree. After Thumi said a prayer for her father, the 3 continued their journey. However, after a short while, Andy began feeling unwell. He only had 9 hours left before turning completely. After a painful struggle, Andy collapsed unconscious onto the ground. Thankfully, Thumi quickly picked up Rosie. After recovering slightly, they continued their desperate journey. They finally found the family from before, but Andy saw the man was digging graves. Approaching closer, Andy realized the man had also been bitten by a zombie. Andy's hopes of leaving Rosie with them were crushed instantly. The man advised Andy to take Rosie and peacefully leave this world together. He even promised to leave Andy 2 bullets. Without hesitation, Andy turned and left. Not long after, he heard gunshots behind him. The man had first ended the suffering of his wife and daughters, then finally himself. Andy picked up the man's gun and sat down, stunned. Was this really how it would end? But hearing Rosie softly call "Daddy" made him drop that thought immediately. Thumi handed Rosie back to Andy, telling him her tribe wasn't far away. She asked if he'd go there with her. Thumi's words gave Andy new hope. If he could bring Thumi safely to her tribe, that would definitely be the best option for Rosie too. Andy immediately agreed, and the 3 continued on. While passing through a dark cave, they saw many zombies facing the wall. Thumi explained that these zombies were sleeping. They liked dark places, just like the ones buried in the dirt earlier. As long as they stayed quiet, they'd be safe. But just as they were about to exit the cave, they spotted Vic outside, and Vic had apparently noticed something and started slowly moving toward them. To distract Vic, Andy quickly hid Thumi and Rosie, then ran behind Vic's truck, shouting Vic's name loudly. He then hurriedly hid among the zombies. Desperate to find Andy, Vic began shooting zombies randomly, but Andy was already prepared for a counterattack. As Vic approached, Andy took his chance and shot him. Unfortunately, the shot didn't hit a vital spot. Instead, the weakened Andy fell to the ground after Vic attacked him. Vic then noticed the two kids hiding in the car. Without hesitation, he grabbed Thumi and brutally beat her, then picked up Rosie. With his last ounce of strength, Andy dragged himself back to his feet. But when he reached Vic, he realized Vic hadn't hurt Rosie after all. Seriously wounded from Andy's shot, Vic had chosen kindness in his final moments. Fortunately, Thumi wasn't seriously hurt, though the blow to her head left her slightly dazed. At the same time, Andy was rapidly losing consciousness. He forced himself to stay alert, carrying Rosie until he simply couldn't anymore. He gently set Rosie down, then stumbled forward a few steps before collapsing onto the ground. When Andy got up, zombie fluid had already covered his entire face. He kept wiping at it, trying desperately to stay awake, spotting some rotten flesh nearby. He even found himself tempted by hunger. Looking back at Rosie, Andy suddenly had an idea. He placed some rotten flesh in his pocket and, with Thumi's help, struggled onward. When he finally couldn't continue, Andy stopped and tied the rotten meat to a stick. He told Thumi he had to leave now, and begged her to care for Rosie. After a heartbreaking farewell, Andy put Rosie safely onto his back. To keep them safe from himself, he placed a protective mouthguard between his teeth and tightly bound his hands. With that done, Andy fully transformed into a zombie, but even then, he kept walking. Ahead, members of Thumi's tribe were busy clearing zombies. As they prepared to leave, they suddenly heard a baby crying behind them. Turning around, they saw an incredible sight through the clearing mist. A zombie carrying a baby, led forward by the rotten flesh dangling ahead of him. As a father, Andy had completed his final mission. In his final moments, Thumi took out Andy's wife's perfume and sprayed it in front of him. She told Andy that Rosie had safely reached her new home. Then the tribe compassionately put Andy to rest. Rosie was welcomed warmly into their tribe. Clearly, everyone there adored the little girl. Later, a tribe member noticed something written on Rosie's belly. The simple word, "Thank you." This was Andy's final act of love for his daughter, and a heartfelt expression of gratitude to those who would care for her.